I feel like that dinner I had where we were always hanging out and then I talked about my savings really like shifted my mindset because it it orange filled two people in one sitting, right? Because we were like, oh, my savings went up this much in a year, and their savings went up 1% in a year. So they were both like instantly orange pilled. I think girls should be more open to because boys are always sharing with each other their gains, right? I have a lot of friends and they're always like, bro, I just like, oh, it's up 100% or like blah blah blah. They're always telling each other these things and they're giving each other alpha. Girls should also be telling each other, be like, hey, I invested in.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Orange Peel Podcast. I'm your host, Nikki, and today I'm joined by someone who has literally seen Bitcoin from the inside and out. I'm here with Professor B, who's also known as Theia. And Theia, she's traveled the world for Bitcoin conferences, shared all of her amazing insights on X and a little bit on YouTube, and taught countless people exactly what money really means. So in this episode, we're going to unpack all of her Bitcoin journey, the biggest lessons that she's learned along the way, and hear stories from the global Bitcoin community. And this is stuff that you probably won't be finding too much on YouTube. So I'm really excited to get into this. But most importantly, we're going to be talking about what Bitcoin means, what all of this really means for Gen Z, for students like you and me who are just trying to figure out money, freedom, and what our future is going to look like. So if you've been wondering, as we've gone through this journey, what Bitcoin really means beyond just the price chart, this is the conversation that you're going to want to stick around for. Thea, thank you so much for coming on today. I am so excited to get to know you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And I've been following along with the podcast, and I love what you're doing, Nikki, with trying to get Gen Zs to understand money. Because to me, I feel like money isn't just money. When you understand Bitcoin, you truly then understand that it's the tools that humans make kind of define who we are. The money that we choose to use define our ideologies, the foundations of what we then decide to build into technology. So yeah, I think as new generation come to know Bitcoin and understand Bitcoin, there's going to be a big shift in not only how we like see finances, but also how we use technology and how we build our societies. Because Bitcoin essentially is this whole big package of more than just money, right? It's like what you think about the government, what you think about self-sovereignty, how you want to raise your family. Like there's so much to it. So I'm very glad to see you do this and push this message to the younger generation.
Thank you. I mean, so my biggest thing right now is I want to reach like the Gen Z girls. So I'm so excited to finally have another girl who's in Bitcoin on this podcast because I think you're my first one actually. So like, this is so great. This is so cool.
It's hard to find girls in this space.
No, there really aren't. But why don't you start us off by, telling us how you got into Bitcoin in the first place?
Yeah, so I got into Bitcoin. So actually, I heard about Bitcoin so many different times before I actually finally went all in on Bitcoin. The first time I ever heard about Bitcoin was in school. My geography teacher told me about Bitcoin in 2012. He literally came into class and he told everyone, he was like, look into this Bitcoin thing and buy Bitcoin. And we were kids. We were like, sir, how, with what money? How are we going to buy Bitcoin? So it was the first time I heard about it. He even showed us a video of someone buying pizza with Bitcoin. So we were like, this guy probably is extremely OG, extremely rich by now. I don't know where he is in the world. But that was the first time, didn't buy Bitcoin. And then again in 2017, it was kind of like this new boom and rise in Bitcoin hitting a new all-time high back then. Best friend's boyfriend at the time, he was a little bit older than us and he was investing in crypto. And I was like, oh, what is this? Like, what are you doing? That was the first time I kind of tried to look into it. But again, 2017, I was too young. I didn't really have disposable income or money at all. I was more focused on just kind of buying lunch. And then I guess the next wave was 19. That was when I graduated university and I kind of was forced to come back to Thailand because of COVID, right? So I think that was when the world kind of changed for a lot of people. I came back and there was a lot of time to just kind of like sit and think about what's going to happen next with my future, what's going on with the world. And then I looked into a lot of different technologies because I study biotech. I've always been a science girl, a technology girl. And during that time, me and my best friend, we wanted to start like a startup here in Thailand, but realized we didn't know anything about anything that's going on. So we, like you, started a podcast, interviewed a few people in Thai language, so not in English. And once COVID happened, we then had to stop our podcast because we then can't meet anyone anymore. We pivoted into more like a technology explanation show. And I kind of told them, I was like, I'm going to do a podcast video on Bitcoin halving. I don't know why. I just wanted to learn about this and I wanted to make a video about this. So I made a 5-minute long video explaining in Thai what Bitcoin halving was and the Bitcoin halving schedule. And that was when I really looked into Bitcoin for the first time and kind of started to understand it. But I think the way you understand Bitcoin, like I understood Bitcoin back then and the way I understand Bitcoin now is totally different because of how much more I know about Bitcoin now. Back then I saw it as like a new technology. I obviously saw the asymmetrical upside. I saw it more like a tech stock and not money, like how I think of it today. And I invested in that and all the other crypto stuff, right? Just as kind of like, put some money in here, like almost like a tech stock, not only until maybe a few years into it when I actually had more time to sit down and think about what is money? What am I doing with my investments? Why am I diversifying into different things? Then I truly understood, wait a second, this isn't just another Tesla, Nvidia, or whatever. This is a revolution in the foundations of our monetary system. Why am I putting money in all these other things, including tech stocks and other cryptocurrencies, when real thing, like everything else is based on speculation, right? Nvidia is like based on speculation on hype, Tesla, all these things. But Bitcoin is what is truly going to be able to fix the current monetary system right now. And that kind of switched a light bulb in my head. It was also thanks to a lot of different podcasts that Michael Saylor went on. Back then, there was like this big series called The What is Money with Robert Breedlove. That changed everything to me, seeing Bitcoin as more than just a new technological advancement, but actually like the future of money. And then I would say I then became a Bitcoiner because then I took everything out of everything else and put everything into Bitcoin. And that is my main form of money.
You mentioned that, you've kind of dove into breaking down Bitcoin and explaining it from like a technological point of view. And that's the main form of content that you're creating, right? Do you think that, traditional education systems that we have, they fail to teach us money properly? And if so, how are Bitcoiners fixing that? What are you doing to fix that?
So when I was in school, I don't think we ever really had a class about money. Maybe we had a few classes about credit, debit, and something like that. But we never really sat down and talked about what is the essence of philosophy of money. We always saw it as kind of like a mathematical, like, how to calculate how much you owe, like tax or whatever. Even that's really rare. Normally schools don't even teach you about taxes. But anyways, so I think the education system really fails students in that they give you these sets of curriculum and sets of things to learn as kind of like a checkbox of like, okay, I've taught the kids this, I've taught the kids this, but they don't really help us piece together why we learn what we learn. Like people learn history, right? And the kids are like, oh, we do it because then you have to do an exam and then you answer the questions, get the questions right, go for your SATs or whatever. But actually, we understand we should be approaching different subjects like history or geography or economics or all these different things as more kind of like lessons and how we can use that into our real life. I never really saw it like that. Like nowadays as an adult, I'm 28 now, I learn when I go back and look at history, I think, whoa, this is like a totally new lens for me. I look at the collapse of the Roman Empire and I see how it's linked to Constantinople, like the fall of, is that how you say the word? I don't know. Like the creation of the Silk Road and before then, and then how we had to shift from when there's now taxes because Constantinople now has like taxes and stuff, you have to move into the imperial exploration, and that's how colonization started. Everything was linked and all equal to how we were doing trade with each other. And then you go into the philosophy of money and like, what is money? That's how we trade, how we find value with each other. I never really thought in those terms as a kid because teachers never really like kind of got there. They were always just kind of, okay, in history classes, what were the most important things we learned? We learned about the Roman Empire, but we didn't learn about why the Roman Empire fell. It was like, war or whatever, but it was generally because of the money, right? The money system was what was essentially what failed them. They debased their own currency, they debased their coins. And then we learned about war, like World War II and the different wars, the Cuban Missile Crisis and all that. But we never really understood what was the underlying thing that we were having war about. Was it on ideology? Was it on and were different countries printing money? How were they funding the wars? Like we didn't really ask these questions. And I guess it's also to do with like the classrooms. Like I think when you're older, you have more life experience, you ask more questions, and these themes come out more.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly I didn't even put two and two together when you were talking about the Roman Empire and everything, because I feel like it's something that we learn about, but mostly when we're taught it, you just, you hear about Julius Caesar, and then you hear about what happened with like Patra and all of that thing about, the money and what was actually going on with the macroeconomics at the time. With a lot of the, mess that's going on in the world in terms of the macroeconomics. So, things like the tariffs in the US and inflation's going wild in pretty much everywhere in the world, and the conflicts that we're seeing in different regions. How would you explain that in terms of money? Is money really the root cause for a lot of these problems?
So I think you can't really separate humanity from the value that we bring and then we exchange with each other. What I mean by that is I think money is the manifestation of the strongest form of energy that we exchange between each other. Like my time is exchanged for a form of currency, money. When I do work or do anything, humans exchange their productivity through wages or whatever from like you work for a company, they pay you like all these different things. It's a manifestation of an energy, right? And then you use that to buy different things. You exchange for groceries, houses, shelter, like all these things. So when we talk about the world at large, like why is it that there's war? Why is it that politicians cheat, corrupt? It's to harness more of this kind of like life source power. And then they have more power, right? They have more money now, they have more power to if you're a good person, you do good. If you're a bad person, you do bad. But it's never black and white. So the way I see it is when the society is built on broken money, it forces people and it teaches people that corruption or doing things in a certain way allows you to gain more power and so on, and it continues a cycle of corruption, right, and coercion and all that. So I think definitely there is a large link between money, how broken money is, and where we are now with policies, laws. I was literally watching a video earlier today because the title was a great clickbait title about we doing better today in 2025 than in 1950s, right? So in the 1950s, that was just after a war. The US dollar, so this video was in the US terms. The US dollar was still based on a gold standard. People were able to afford houses based on almost their annual income, right? Their annual income was able to buy houses and provide for a whole family. Like one person was able to provide for their wife, their kids, buy a house, buy a car, and all that. And this is like the median income, not like a super rich person. But as time passed, there is a bigger disparity between the top earners and the kind of lower earners and the median earners. And this all really, there was a big inflection point in 1970s. And we all know what happens in 1971 when the dollar was taken off the gold standard, debased so that they could print more of it for war. Not only did it create inflation at a crazy rate, but it also changed the way the government makes policies. Now they can make policies that encourage more of this cycle, right? More of the we can pay each other out. We can pay our debts by just fucking the normal person. And the wealth gap became more and more. So back then, I guess I saw a statistic where CEOs were making X what a normal person was making back in like the 50s, 70s, like that. But nowadays it's over 400% because
Gosh.
the gap is so large, right? And this is money now is so corrupted and manipulated, and we can see that happening again and again. I think it all happens because of different decisions we make as a country, as like policymakers and as the government over time that compiles into this snowball of where we are now. People just do whatever they can to get what they need out of the situation, where in this case is to gain power, to gain more money, to have power over the printing press, to have power over making the laws and lobbying or whatever.
That's a great point. I mean, that's a really, really great point. And I wanted to ask, so a lot of us that, are in uni right now, we're taking econ classes, we're taking finance classes. And we're being taught a lot of these things. We're being taught about, inflation and tariffs and taxes and government intervention, you name it. But we're being taught almost the opposite of what it looks like Bitcoin stands for. So,
Yep.
how would you reframe, a lot of these problems that we're seeing as consequences of not being on a Bitcoin standard?
You know, I really want to know actually, because I never studied economics. I did a double degree in business and biotechnology. So it was more
Mhm.
heavy on kind of like the biotech technology, emerging economies, that type of things, technology that will help in emerging economies. So what do they actually teach you? Because I want to hear it and then I'll be like, okay. So that's how they're
So,
going about it.
I think the biggest one I can think of that's kind of contradicting to what we learn as Bitcoiners is in my intermediate microeconomics class last semester. My prof was talking about how inflation is good for the economy because it keeps
Mm.
the circulation of cash flow going. And this was at the time that the US had just announced her Liberation Day and we had the tariffs come in place, right? So he had a whole lecture on why these tariffs were a really, really bad thing and a lot of those things. And yeah, so I think the biggest thing I can think of is just we're getting taught that inflation is a good thing. And in our finance classes,
Well,
it's
did
almost
anyone
even
ask you
worse.
about house prices and all that?
Not that I can remember. I remember I was listening to him and a lot of the things that he was saying, and I wasn't a huge Bitcoiner at this time, but I would call my dad afterwards and I was like, oh, this is what my econ prof said today. And my dad was a huge Bitcoiner. So he was like, none of that makes sense. And I was like, that's what I was thinking. Cause I'm like, you tell me one thing and then he's telling me another thing. And I'm like, should I go argue this? Like, should I be the person in the lecture who's like, actually, like, this is how it actually is. And, that was the whole thing. My dad's like, don't bother, don't bother. That's going to be more trouble than it's worth. But I think
Mm.
just what we're learning in universities, obviously it's Keynesian economics, right? And Bitcoin
Mm.
goes hand in hand with Austrian economics almost. So yeah, I mean, what I wanted to ask is essentially, where does Bitcoin fit in the equation of, fixing all of these macroeconomic problems?
So I recently learned about a interesting fact. Don't quote me. Everyone go do your research, check on this. But schools and education systems were built during a time, I think it's Persia. So okay, so this might be you guys go check, right? But the gist of the vibe of what I'm trying to say is correct, which is education systems like schools, elementary, university, all these things were created during a time of war to create warriors and people for the country to send out to war. And it was an easy kind of like systematic way to train people with a specific way of learning. I don't know if I explained that correctly, but it was by the Persia Empire, which is now non-existent, but it was like kind of like German area-ish. So yeah, I think this still applies today because we took that system and applied it to high school, elementary school, and university. People are not really taught to be individual thinkers, creators, inventors anymore. We're kind of taught to be a print of of like this, like a product of the system. They teach you things that are safe for them to then use you as an employee in a company. They don't teach you to think outside the box, challenge the current system, and be a dangerous individual, I guess. You know what I mean? Like people who are questioning the like your dad was like, oh, it's more problems or it will cause more trouble than any good if you question them. But why? Right? Because then they will feel threatened by their authority as being threatened. But isn't university supposed to be kind of like this classroom where you exchange ideas? Isn't the teacher supposed to be someone who encourages you to ask these questions and bring forth a lot of these, like, like challenge him, right? Challenge the Keynesian economics, bring forth this idea. But it's not anymore. It's more kind of like creating almost robot NPCs of like, you believe me, do this. Like that's kind of like the issue here, right? Like I have a big issue with this type of education system. Like I grew up in the same education system. I went to school, university and that, but I was lucky enough that I went to a really, really small school. Like my high school was like, I probably had 4 to 5 kids per high school, like per class. And I was like there with the teacher. We'd always be up there in my teacher's face, asking questions and being like, why is this? Like, why is that? And then only when I went to Australia, this was back in Thailand, I went to international school. In Australia, it was like a 20-person class, 30 class. It was so different. You were able to kind of hide away in the back of the class if you didn't want to ask any questions, if you didn't want to be seen, and they wouldn't even know if you were learning anything or not, right? So that's kind of how the school system usually is in a really big class. And university is even worse. Like, you go to the classrooms. I went to Aussie uni. You don't like, lectures are not even compulsory. I would sometimes go to a lecture and do all that because I feel like it's just now become a system that they implement. You do this or not, they don't really care about where you go. But I think thinking back to when I was in high school in a really small class where you could actually still challenge and think outside the box and further kind of like your thought process with someone sitting there across from you who's a little bit older, that was way better. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is the whole system has been made not to further our curiosities, but to stifle it. And also to kind of, because the class are now so big, you can hide away and not even try anymore. So it's way better to, if people are able to, is go into smaller classes or parents teach their kids. Like, for example, your dad, right, is a Bitcoiner, and you can probably learn so much more about the economy and understand more about how money works from him than from a teacher, because his desire is to get you to become someone who is proficient and understands finances. Your teacher's desire is just to get you to follow the curriculum and become part of the system. They're very different kind of goals. If
Yeah,
I
I
go
mean,
on a tangent or something, please remind me, because sometimes it's like, are you amazing? This one.
no, you're good. Tangents are always good. But it's interesting that you talk about this because I feel like it's only gotten worse post-COVID, right? You said
Mhm.
obviously in Aussie unis, lectures have never been compulsory, but since COVID, since they started getting recorded,
Mm.
lectures are empty all the time. It feels like I feel like I can go into some of my lectures and actually have that like 4 to 5 student and one prof kind of, which is really, really insane. But my main point is there's a big kind of movement, I guess. There's a big rebellion almost around bringing back critical thinking, which is,
Mm.
something that a lot of people like to say, like, you need to be a critical thinker, you need to think for yourself and learn to not be a sheep, and a lot of these things. So, where does, I guess Bitcoin fit into that? Can learning about Bitcoin, can that encourage you to become a critical thinker?
I think, like I always tell people, learning about Bitcoin will attract you in based on who you are as a person, right? It really depends on that, because you can't always force your same hooks to other people. When I'm always kind of challenge the status quo, challenge the system type of person. So I'm very interested in this side of Bitcoin. When I talk to some of my friends, it was really hard for them to wrap their heads around, oh yeah, don't trust the money printer, the Fed, all these conspiracy theories, CIA, like, they don't care about that. But when I was like, it's kind of like a high yield savings account where if you just save money there, like, it's, Bitcoin has so many sides to it. It's like a big can of worms where you open it, and the more you learn about it, the more it becomes more evident that, this applies to almost every part of your life. So, does it make you a more critical thinker? I think it does, because anyone who is already open to challenging what money is someone who is willing to kind of question their whole framework, mind frame, ideology system that they've lived up to now, and be like, hey, wait a second, maybe this is wrong. Hey, wait a second, what is money? So it triggers a lot of different questions in a person. And if you're able to go along with those questions, go down the rabbit hole a little bit deeper, then I would say you are developing more critical thinking, more investigative thinking, and all these different skills. Someone who doesn't ask these questions and doesn't look into it at all, obviously isn't really thinking of it in a critical way. They're just accepting what life is and just, being like, yeah, it is what it is. I go to work, I make money, I pay tax. That is what it is, like that. So I think Bitcoin, people who have critical thinking are attracted to Bitcoin, and it increases your critical thinking because it allows answers for these questions that you have. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to get at. I think, in framing Bitcoin as something that frees you from the matrix or from the shackles, like a lot of people like to say, seems really like attractive, and it's what helps, younger generations find it. because we're seeing such a rise in, I guess, socialism and like anti-government sentiment all across the world in younger generations, especially because we're starting to really, really distrust, governments and banks and
Mhm.
universities and a lot of the traditional things that we've been taught that we've always seen as right. And yeah, but I wanted to shift gears a little bit here because you do a lot of explanations for, the tech behind Bitcoin. So just out of curiosity, what's the most kind of overlooked innovation or part of Bitcoin that younger students should understand, or the one that maybe would attract younger students the most?
Hmm. That's very interesting because Bitcoin is such a rabbit hole. There's so many different parts of it. I think something that's been extremely interesting to me recently is Bitcoin as a protocol. Not only Bitcoin as a protocol captures time. It captures time in 10-minute increments over 100-year long period of time, right? And to me, this is so beautiful in that we think of money and we think of all these different things separate to other factors in the world. Like I've never thought of my money as time before. Maybe time like we exchange it like an hourly wage or whatever like that. But with
Yeah.
Bitcoin, it's energy that is used to be able to mine this. The time one block is kind of like mined in like 10 minutes or so. Every halving, like 4 year cycle. And I guess it's like the processing time. Like I'm, I don't know 100% how to articulate this idea yet because it's like been a new obsession of mine, but time is so hard to capture, but Bitcoin is able to fully capture and value record that element. So I don't know. I think that was probably not the best answer, but it's something that I've been thinking about recently where I'm like, you know what? There's so many different elements of Bitcoin. It's the mining process, it's the energy harvesting process, all these things, but also the ability that it's able to capture, crystallize time and create blocks that hook us in different points of time for the next 100 years is very interesting to me. I don't know if that is technology. It's just more like a ideology concept that I feel like 100 years from now, we look back on the blockchain, like the Bitcoin blockchain, and we could see each hash, each time a Bitcoin is mined, each transaction. And it's kind of like a huge global ledger of how value is exchanged. And that's so beautiful to me. Because how do we know, right? In the past, we've never known. Maybe there are books that keep ledgers, but then they get lost, they get burnt, they get fall, whatever. But now we have that.
Yeah, that's a really cool way to think about things because I think at least I've always heard the phrase that time is money, but I've never heard, money is time. So I think that's such a cool way to look at it. And especially because this would be so cool if we went on a Bitcoin like fully just global adoption and we
Mm,
started using the blockchain as a way to keep history, right? The entire
mm, mm.
concept of lost history would just go away. Like
Exactly.
I'm sure you've heard about like the Library of Alexandria, right? I think that's like my Roman Empire. Like there's nothing that I think about more than that library because there are all these things that we've just lost that, we could have known that could have stored so many stories and, math and other findings that just would have been so, so cool to know about and maybe so essential to society today. And with a blockchain, that whole thing is gone. I mean, anything that's on the blockchain is on there pretty much forever. So, with that, do you think that a shift to Bitcoin is inevitable? Or, does adoption depend more on generational shifts?
I think it's inevitable. I think it's happening. It's to be honest, I feel like it's already too late to stop and it's already happening. We don't necessarily have control over how it will happen. Like I know a lot of Bitcoiners have opinions about, oh, this is a good way to adopt Bitcoin. No, this is a good way, blah, blah, blah. But Bitcoin has this energy of its own that it emits and it attracts other people to itself, right? Like I say, there's so many different facets and sides to Bitcoin and people are attracted to Bitcoin for many different reasons and it's always personal. Like it depends on their personal story and all that. Like you can't really force Bitcoin on anyone. Anyone who's ever tried to convince someone to buy Bitcoin knows this because it's always heartache. People don't want to come to Bitcoin anyway. It has its own magnetic pull, pulling people from all different walks of life into it in itself. And it's become, and it, to me, I think it is inevitable that we will adopt Bitcoin at a large scale. There's this thing called, I don't know if I'm saying, wait, one sec. It's called the Gresham's Law. Is that how you say it? One sec, okay? Yeah. So this thing called Gresham's Law. I remember I made a video about this. Gresham's Law, where good money drives out bad money. When there is an alternative good money that comes into the flow of the system, all the bad money is then quickly used up and used as the quick exchange, whereas the good money is stored and kind of like kept longer. So I think that is currently happening. People are realizing that fiat or their country currency is bad money. We're going to use that like hot potatoes, and then we store and save the digital gold, which is Bitcoin, as the most valuable asset. So it's inevitable.
A lot of Gen Z right now, we think that for us, it's too hard to get into Bitcoin because, as you said, in your intro, when you first heard about Bitcoin was like 2017, but you were too young and you weren't really thinking about it. We're in the same boat right now. We haven't
Yeah.
got the money to put into Bitcoin whatsoever. So what can we do to get into it, even in baby steps? A lot of us are kind of trying to make money as fast as possible. And so that's why we see a big rise in day trading and sports betting and a lot of other things that we're doing to make money. So what's your pitch to a college student who, would rather be gambling on those meme coins or be sports betting or trading on the stock market?
I think those are a result of late game fiat, right? Because we've come to a point in history where money is so overly inflated. Everything is so expensive. Having a college degree or not having a college degree doesn't matter anymore. People make the same amount of money. Like jobs are being lost to AI. Capitalism, from being the best thing ever, has now turned into the thing that we're all gonna lose to. Now we don't have jobs. Like, we are in a very critical time in history right now that people are scrambling to survive. I think having knowledge of financial literacy is the most important thing. So they need to study Bitcoin, study money. They're trying to make money to buy Bitcoin because they feel like Bitcoin is too expensive. I think you should shift the mindset and think, hey, wait a minute. It's not that Bitcoin is too expensive, is that your dollars are getting less valuable. So it doesn't matter how fast you're building your wealth in dollars. You should be building your wealth in Bitcoin, right? So right now, Bitcoin is at over 100K, and people think, oh, this is it. This is the top. It's not going to go more than this. But you have to think in the long run. Bitcoin has only been around for 15 years, and only 2025 are people like institutions are buying Bitcoin, corporations buying Bitcoin, governments buying Bitcoin, ETFs and stuff like that. This is just the beginning. The faster you as a teenager or a Gen Z college student embraces the Bitcoin standard, meaning put everything you have into Bitcoin and use that as your forms of savings and investment, the faster you do that, the faster and better you are for your future. It's not a fast game. I think people nowadays, they just want to be rich now, be rich tomorrow, be rich in 2 years. It's about building low time preference and long-term steady growth, right? If you as a person, you're able to align your career goals to this new shift in technology, coming into either building with Bitcoin as the foundation, saving money in Bitcoin, creating financial products within Bitcoin, or I guess how to do AI and Bitcoin together. Like, if you are able to align yourself in that, if you're saving money in that, and you're going to be set for like 10 years to 20 years, you're going to be set. Like, I think trying to chase that quick gains of like, in 1 or 2 years, I'm going to be retired, it's more like a pipe dream than reality. If you're someone who wants to really change your life, change other people's lives, and change how technology is used, you want to be a builder who builds long-term and low time preference kind of desires, right? You build within this industry and grow together with it. It's never too late, because if it's a game, if you think about it, if the life is a game, Bitcoin is a currency, so everyone will use it. New people being born will need to eventually grow up and buy Bitcoin. You're not going to be the youngest forever. There's going to be kids alpha. Gen alpha is going to come up and need Bitcoin, so Gen Z, you're going to have time to stack before Gen alpha stacks. And then the after alpha is going to need Bitcoin. So you guys have the time to, Gen alpha will stack when they stack. So I think this mindset is because of late game fiat. We're all in a quick money, quick mindset. But if you shift to the Bitcoin standard, you have a low time preference and you're no longer chasing quick gains. And you understand that, I'm not going to be the last generation. Gen Alpha is going to come in, and then they're going to be the next generation. And then the after one's going to need to stack too. So we're going to.
Yeah, I mean, do you think Gen Z could be the first, like, truly Bitcoin native generation?
Oh, how big's a Gen Z gap? Like from what year to what year?
I think it's 1996 to maybe 2010, I think is the age range.
2010, 15 years old. I think that's okay. So 10 years from now, they'll be 25. Yeah, I think within the next 10, 20 years, Bitcoin will be a very standardized money system. So I think when Gen Zs are in their kind of like late 20s, 30s, it will be pretty common, right? A lot of us are going to be using Bitcoin. I think Gen Alpha are going to be Bitcoin babies. A lot of people who are having babies now are going to have Bitcoin babies. They never knew anything but Bitcoin. Yeah. Is there a Gen Alpha right now, or we haven't made a name for that yet?
I think we might be actually in Gen Beta.
Oh,
I think,
Gen Beta. Oh my
like,
God, that's
yeah, I think starting this year, it's like Gen Beta. I
Imagine
actually,
being called a
I've,
Gen Beta.
I
I'm
know it's
sorry.
so
I love like
embarrassing.
kids being Beta. That's sad. What's the one after that? The Omega. I might at least be the
I
Omega,
don't know
not
if we've reached that far.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really cool that we've got time on our side, I think, as Gen Z. And we just have to keep stacking and,
You just gotta
realize
front
that
run the
long
Gen
term.
Alpha. That's all you need to do. Front
Yeah,
run Gen Alpha when you're older.
exactly.
They'll need it too. And Gen Beta and Gen Omega.
True. That's so true. So, what are some habits that Gen Z can start building kind of nowish as a lot of us are in college or leaving college to start, stacking sats and start actually building that conviction for Bitcoin in our future?
Habits. Stop buying $5 coffee, like all those things. No, but I think when I was young, right, a lot of things that are attractive to me are the glitz and glam. And I think it's like pretty normal for girls and people to be like, they want to be like their peers to buy things. But I think as you get older, you realize none of that really matters. Wealth isn't in your performative actions, like what you wear, what you have, but in health, the ability to, have a family, providing for your loved ones, taking like, and doing all those different things. I think the faster you're able to get yourself out of the performative state of having to be competitive with your peers on things you buy, what you wear, the better it is for your life in the long run. Because once you stop comparing to them and you start looking, what is my dream life? Like if I want a house on land, or if I want to take care of not just myself but my family, my grandparents, like I want to spend time with them. How do I build a career that gives me the freedom to do all these things? Like the faster you get into that mindset, the better your life is going to be. Because when I was young, so many of my peers and so many people, you were purely doing things to kind of fit in or look good. Like a lot of people went into kind of like the big four consulting, or like big corporate jobs, because then they get the handbags, like the makeup, like the whatever, and then they kind of show off to each other. They will then realize as they get older that none of these things really matter. What true wealth is the ability to, yeah, to stack sats, because then you create generational wealth and you provide for your family, and yeah, having good health in the long run, longevity, like all these things are what wealth truly is. Freedom, not having to be stuck in a golden cage of a 9 to 5. You get paid well, but then you're stuck in this cage. You got to follow what other people tell you. That's true luxury, right? Being able to have the time at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday to have an interview with someone on a podcast because I live on a Bitcoin standard and I don't have a boss. That is, to me, what true wealth, true luxury is. It's not having skyscrapers, but having time. And that's the new generation. You got to shift your mindset. Try to get more time.
That's awesome. I mean, living on a Bitcoin standard actually sounds like the literal dream, and I'm trying to get there. once I graduate. But if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, stop being performative.
Yeah.
Stop being
Don't be so
performative.
aggressive.
So,
It's hard.
out of my own curiosity, it is so hard. It is so, so hard. I mean, we live in a world where we sit with our friends and it's like the one thing that we can do to hang out is go out and like get a coffee or get drinks or go on a night out or something like that. And that's like, 12 coffees are like $10, $12 now. It's actually
You live
ridiculous.
in
And
Melbourne,
then
so it's even more expensive. I
it's
remember those
so bad. And a
brunch is
night
so
out, like,
expensive.
easily it's so expensive. I mean, any hangout, any, like, function can send you back about $100 just easily. And you, like, look at your bank account the next day and you're like, "Where did all of that go?"
Yeah. It's also
It's
important
like
to live life. That's one thing I also was realizing. Having experiences are important. Like if I could go back to when I was in my early 20s, which, I think the most important thing that I would change is buy less things and spend more on experiences because you never know when you'll have that time again. The older you get, the more people get busy, they have their own lives, they do their own things, and you don't know when you can go on that trip with your friends again. So I never like some people they don't do anything and they just stack stats. But for me, I'm always like, if I can take that trip, if I could go see my friend, I will because you never know when they'll be free again. Like they have their own life too. That's why I also like recently I've been traveling doing lots of Bitcoin conferences because I'll never be the age that I am with the ability that I have right now again because one day I want to have a family. Once I have a family, maybe it'll be harder for me to travel around, meet all these people, right? So it's always important to don't forget to live life while you stack your sats.
yeah, and that's really important to remember. I think that's one of the most daunting things about, building your financial future. A lot of people are just like, "You're young now, you've gotta save, you've gotta work for your future." Like, work hard, play harder, or work now, play later, whatever the saying is.
We can't pray hard, but now we're just praying
Baby.
hard. So we can like pray that we have some money. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like the younger generation, it's like harder and harder for them. And you're competing with so much. You're competing with AI. You're competing with literal things that have the knowledge base of the universe. How are people gonna do that? So you have to be more tactical, I guess.
No, you really, really do. The world is changing. But let's talk about your Bitcoin conferences because I have been following you on X and you've been posting so much and it has been so cool. So if you were in Asia and you were in Europe, like what's that like to, travel the world and meet Bitcoiners from all over? That looks awesome.
So it really all kind of started with US. So that was the first trip that I went, which opened my eyes to meeting a lot of other Bitcoiners. I had a few friends. So I'm from Asia, I'm from Bangkok. I have a few friends here we talk about Bitcoin together, we hang out and all that. And earlier this year, we went to Strategy World because my friend, he a AI portrait artist, which is so cool, by the way, Gen Zs. You can be anything in the world. Money is in the air. Just, use your creativity and do it. He is a AI portrait artist who makes portraits of Michael Saylor, and now he
Oh,
just,
cool.
just does that, makes lots of things for strategy, their branding and all that. But we went together. I met so many different people, and we were able to go to the strategy headquarters, strategy office, talk to Fong Lee, the CEO, and then went to meet all the different people who are in the MSTR community, and then go to Bitcoin Vegas. That was the first trip. We kind of self-funded that and it was really expensive, but it was so worth it because we got to meet a lot of different people and I started making videos because of that trip. Before then I was kind of like just a casual ex Twitter person where, I'll talk on spaces sometimes, I'll come on, but I didn't really like see it as potentially this is something that I could do. But I think then I realized, oh, I can try to make this something that I could do full time. I can be somewhat of like a journalist. So I then started to make more videos, more full time. Then people would encourage me to go talk to them or meet different people at conferences, and conferences would reach out to be like, oh, like we can do stuff together. So it became something where, I could see myself building a career in that. And I guess I went full time on that, tried to make more videos, trying to find my footing of like where I want to be. Cause there's so many different ways you could go about this, right? You can be like a news kind of anchor, you can do like a podcast or something like that, like what you're doing. So I was trying to figure out where I want to place myself. And I think right now I'm still in the process of figuring that out, but I'm more on like kind of the news side right for now, but I don't want to say just yet because it might change in a few weeks because I'm really like sitting down thinking about that. But yeah, it's been so crazy that all these opportunities come just because you put yourself out there. I think US was me putting myself out there, and then Europe was kind of me meeting up with a lot of people who invite me to go meet them, to going to the conferences, and then Asia was really eye-opening because I saw the different aptitudes or the different ways people from the US, from Europe, from Asia see Bitcoin, and it's so crazy. US and Europe are a little bit more like there's a lot of people who get it, right? And when in Europe, if you don't get Bitcoin technology, you don't get Bitcoin, you kind of like oust it like, oh no, like, Bitcoin is about self-sovereignty, like it's about perfect money, like all these things. But in Asia, it was really eye-opening to me because a lot of people were buying Bitcoin and getting into Bitcoin, but they were also getting into scams. But then they were okay with getting into scams. And I was like, oh, why are you okay with getting into scams? As long as it's kind of like, as long as I can benefit from the scam, it's okay kind of mentality. So I was like, okay, what is going on? It needs a lot more education in this side. But what can we do to spread more awareness? And yeah, it really challenged me because I feel like just yelling online, it's kind of a little bit of a vacuum of telling people who are already into Bitcoin that Bitcoin is good. But when you go into a space where people are actually buying Bitcoin, openly being okay with being scammed and openly not understanding Bitcoin, but saying that they own Bitcoin, you're kind of like, oh wait, is any of the internet education that I'm putting out there even reaching these people? So I kind of am having a little bit of a, how do I recontextualize this? How do I really work in this space and make a difference? That was only like a few weeks ago. So I'm still in that process of like, okay, where do I stand in this industry? How do I continue on and make the biggest impact? Yeah. So it's really
Yeah,
fun. All the different spaces, different countries gave me new perspectives on Bitcoin.
that's so awesome. That's so cool to hear about. And out of my own curiosity, have you tried to like orange pill your friends or maybe like people around you who aren't really into Bitcoin or aren't really into finances?
Every day. Like, you cannot shut me
Okay.
up. Like, some people are like, "Oh, there's a time and place." My time and place is every moment. Like, we go to KFC. I'm like, it's getting more expensive to buy KFC. Like, why? I go see my dad. Some people, they're like, "Oh, you gotta, like, Trojan horse Bitcoin in." The only time I Trojan horse is when I'm, like, trying to make content. But when I'm, like, with people, I never Trojan horse. I just go straight to the point, be like, if you were to buy Bitcoin back in 2020, you would have had this much money by now, or whatever. So sick of me. I am the Bitcoin girl. I
That's
I am very successful though at convincing my close group. So my dad is now a Bitcoiner and he understands Bitcoin very well. It's incredible. He doesn't even speak English and he understands it at a very philosophical level. I'm so proud of him. My sister now owns Bitcoin. My little sister, who's 19, also puts her whole life savings into Bitcoin. So for the younger generation, you think you don't have that much, but continue to just put everything in and you're already ahead of the curve, right? So and my mom is coming around to it. She has Bitcoin, but she's a gold person. She's like old school, like I want to hold something tangible, gold or whatever. Have gold, have also digital gold. My best friends are saving in Bitcoin. They're not like investing or putting a lot in, but they're just like slowly trickling down, putting some money into Bitcoin. I recently got a editor to help me with like my clips, which is like kind of like my sister's friend. I pay him a little bit, and he also got into Bitcoin because all the videos he was editing were like about Bitcoin. And he was like, oh wait, I need to buy Bitcoin now. Yeah. So a lot of people around me are now Bitcoiners because I just talk to them every day about Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's so cool, especially that you were able to get your sister into it. Because I'm 19 as well, and I talk
Yeah.
to a lot of my friends about it, or just about money in general. I'm like, "Hey, like, have
Mhm.
we noticed that coffee is more expensive this year than last? Like, are we keeping track of what's going on? Did we see the rent increase that they sent out last month?" And it's just been tough, I think, especially with girls, because a lot of us, when we're growing up, we aren't really told anything about finances.
Mm.
And we do live in a society where there is a sentiment of like women shouldn't talk about money, finances are not their problem. So
Mm.
how have you gone about kind of crossing that and getting more girls to believe in Bitcoin?
So, from my experience, I think women are actually smarter than men in a lot of ways. In school,
Clock it.
I've always seen like me and my group of friends, like girls, we're always getting the best marks and doing anything. And it's only later on that men are more interested in the finance side and women kind of feel intimidated by it and then they like don't invest. But actually, I don't think there is a gender gap between understanding. Like, I think women are just as smart at understanding these things. It's just that they're intimidated by the very male heavy dominated field and think it's not for them. So when I talk to my friends, it's not kind of like crypto bro, finance bro kind of talk. I just talk like in a very matter of fact, if you want to be saving money, you want to make sure that you're saving in the right asset or like the right thing, right? Like, I don't try to, because I think it's a little bit, at first, when I was thinking about content, I was thinking, oh, do I have to contextualize it in a way girls understand? And I was like, wait a second, I'm a girl. Why do I have to dumb it down thinking that girls are dumb? Right. And if you talk to them like normal, or you don't talk to them like dumb and just be like, oh, yeah, like a Chanel bag is this much. And if you want to, is it the best? Like, if you don't just contextualize it in that way, kind of demeaning women's intelligence, then you'll realize that women are just always as intelligent as guys as well. Not in a male versus female kind of way. It's just that all humans have essential needs like shelter, housing, family, like all these things. And if you just go for those essential needs kind of topic, if you want to buy a house, if you want to save up money, if you want to do all these things, you want to be self-sovereign, they'll also care about it because men care about it, women also care about it. So I tend to go to the essential needs kind of area. So my friend, I recently successfully orange pilled her by just talking to her about how last year I put my life savings into Bitcoin and Bitcoin has increased by over 100%, meaning that now my life savings is increased by 100%. And she's like, holy shit, should I do that? And I was like, yeah, right? Like, you're putting money into your savings account because you want to save that money. Look into Bitcoin because if you're saving in a normal savings account, you get like 1%. But if you're saving in Bitcoin, you get 60, 100%, depending on the year. And she was convinced because of that, right? That's just a normal human kind of like essential need you want to save for something in the future. It's always been more successful to just go with kind of like the most basic way. I didn't really talk about the Fed or money printing or inflation with her because I think for her it wasn't an immediate like a fear because she's more Thai. She doesn't really, even though Thailand's hella corrupted. We recently just got like over 3 million bank accounts frozen. People can't access their money. But for her, it
Oh my
was more like,
gosh.
you know, yeah, for her, she wants to see like I'm saving money. Our other friend, who was also her friend, like, so the three of us, right? Like three best friends. Actually, there's four of us, but it was just between the three of us, the conversation. I was saving money and I said I put everything in. My other friend, her boyfriend was buying Bitcoin since 2020. He helped her buy some Bitcoin. So we were both saying, like it's good to have some Bitcoin. So this one felt FOMO and was like, okay, maybe I should be saving in Bitcoin. So it was just like a normal conversation. I didn't really contextualize it to women. But I think women in general are more intimidated because it's so male dominated and whenever people talk to them about it, it's in a very like feminine, like demeaning way. So they feel like, oh, so we don't get the hard part. But if you just talk about the hard part in an easy to understand, contextualized way, then people get it. Like people are smart.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because I was thinking about it because I really, really want to get more of my friends into Bitcoin. And
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the point where I'm making content that's like getting on Bitcoin now is like getting on a Birkin back in the
Yes.
1980s. Girl, come on. Like that's just not it's not what we want to put out there. It's not the way that women want to be perceived, especially not Gen Z women because like
Yeah.
you said, we're all humans, we're all smart and we all are able to understand and contextualize to our basic needs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I
The
think I think
art
I just need
of
to try
videos,
that.
I think it will do well. The Birkin compared Birkin increase to Bitcoin increase, and they'll see, oh wait a second, Bitcoin actually increases more than Birkin. That is good for clickbait, and I don't. I think it's actually good for some content because you don't get to sit face to face and talk to them, and that's how you hook them in. So that's fine. But when you're talking face to face, it's better to just go to the what does this person care about and how do we get to their basic needs. But if it's a video, I think there's no problem trying to be a little bit clickbaity because that's how the internet works. Attention economy.
That's true. As much as I hate to say it, clickbait is definitely a real thing. And
But when you're
as
talking to your
content
friends, you don't
creators,
want to
we
click them, Like we're just sitting here. I'm like, why are you trying to like dumb it down for me? I understand what you do. Because imagine going to coffee with someone and trying to dumb it down and then they will be so confused and they'll be like, why do you need to feel like you need to dumb it down for me? it's as if you are smarter than me. Like the conversation will not go anywhere.
No, that's really, really great advice, and I think I know how to approach some of these conversations more often with my friends. I think I just have to go all in, like 100% full force into just being the Bitcoin girl, and like you
Yes.
said, going out to dinner and be like, "Hey, look at this credit surcharge. Wouldn't happen if we were on Bitcoin."
Or
But
I think
with
girls should be more open to because boys are always sharing with each other their gains, right? I have a lot of friends and they're always like, bro, I just like, oh, it's up 100% or like blah blah blah. They're always telling each other these things and they're giving each other alpha. Girls should also be telling each other, be like, hey, um, I invested in Bitcoin. My dad told me about this like a year ago. Now it's up. Like, have you guys even thought about that? Like, it's okay to also share alpha with each other because boys do it all the time. At dinner, they're always like, oh, like this, and this. Did you invest in this? You know, girls, you can also do it and see
Yeah,
how your friend
true.
did
I
it.
don't know why. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm gonna start doing that. It's enough of
Yeah.
like girls won't talk about money. Like I'd be like, guys, like 100x, come on.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not even always about it's like you gotta know your friends. I feel like that dinner I had where we were always hang out and then I talked about my savings really like shifted my mindset because it orange filled two people in one sitting, right? Because we were like, oh, my savings went up this much in a year, and their savings went up 1% in a year. So they were both like instantly orange pilled. So I was like, you know, you can talk to friends about like money in that way.
No, that's really cool. And on that note, because I think that's a great place to leave it, there's one question that I love to ask everyone when they come on, and that is if there was one, resource, book, podcast, video, whatever, that you would recommend to the Gen Z watching this to get them started on Bitcoin, what would that be?
Watch the whole Robert Breedlove, Michael Saylor, What is Money podcast. I think there's 9 or 10 episodes and they're like an hour each. It's so interesting. It's not just about financial markets, even though Michael Saylor is known for doing Bitcoin treasuries. It's about the history of humans, how we create tools, fire, water, how we harvest the power of water. Now, how do we harvest the power of money? Like, it's so good. Watch the whole thing and then you'll kind of like have a great basis to continue on your Bitcoin journey.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna link What is Money, the entire series, as a card and in the description. And with that being said, thank you for coming on, Thea. This was so much fun. I had so much fun talking with you today. But that's it for today's episode of the Orange Pill Podcast. And thanks again, Thea, for coming on and sharing your journey, all your wisdom, and like really, really awesome stories. This was so much fun for me. And if you're Gen Z and you've been kind of on the fence about Bitcoin, I really hope that this conversation gave you something real to think about, beyond hype and beyond all the headlines. And if you're one of my friends and you're watching this, I'm coming for you next time I see you at a function at dinner. We're going to be talking money. We're going to be talking all about our gains and everything. So be prepared for that. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with a friend